Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Marcia, how you doing? I missed you last week. Hi, Ellen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Carol's here and Bev's here and Bill Murray is here.
The
Oh, look at that. Susan. I missed you last week, Susan. How you doing? Hi, Susan. Susan, you're on mute in case you're trying to say something.
Hi, I'm glad I'm here. I was out of town last week.
Okay, that's a valid excuse. I'm not going to ask you for a note.
Okay, because I was in Italy.
All right, that qualifies. How was it? Did you eat a lot of pasta?
Yeah.
Where were you in Italy?
Rome, Venice, Florence.
Sounds great. Marcia and I have a mutual friend who's in Italy right now. Bonnie's in Italy.
Oh,
Do you know Bonnie?
well, she didn't tell me that.
Oh. Hi, Margot. Hi, Glad. Glad, do you know how to turn on the visual? I'm going to assume not.
Hey, I'm not gonna. I have the flu, so I'm not gonna. I'm gonna mute myself today, so I don't cough and.
Yeah, we don't want to catch the flu on Zoom. That's the last.
Yeah, I won't disturb you with my coughing.
Margot, I'm sorry you're not feeling well.
I know. Thank you for. Thank you. I'm already better, getting better, so I'm already on the mend.
All right. Carol, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank God.
Yes, absolutely.
Everything is good. All right, so why don't we get started? And why don't we get started by seeing who has residual questions, issues, topics, frustrations, or confusion from last week? Nobody? Hi, Robin. Oh, Lori's here. Great.
Hello.
Hi, Lori. How you doing?
Thank God, doing well. And you?
Thank God, very well. Hi, Robin. And I bet your
Hi.
friend's name is Marlene. Am I right?
Marlene.
Hi, Marlene. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Oh, let me get the book.
So was I the only one confused last week, or what about the rest of you? This was very heavy stuff we were speaking about.
Yeah. Want to put the light on, Robin?
All right, so we'll begin in a moment. I just want to seriously check in to see if anybody has any questions either about last week or has anything else that they'd like to say or bring up or question about anything in general.
Do you have any questions?
Bill,
so we're after last week, we're basically saying that God is essentially unknowable. Is that
correct?
correct?
Correct.
So if God is unknowable, why are we spending our time here?
That's the million-dollar question. You could always get your money back, by the way. But
It's funny.
while it's presumptuous to think that we can know God, we can know about God. And one way that we can know about God is by knowing about ourselves, because after all, we were created, B'Tselem Elohim. We were created in God's image. So by learning about ourselves, we can extrapolate and learn about God. So yes, we can say based on scripture, we're created in God's image, but what does that actually mean? It means that the building blocks that God used to create the universe in the macro are the same building blocks that he used to create the human being in the micro. So all of us have attributes given to us by God that are the same, it's a blueprint of how God created the human being. As an example, He created us with 3 different aspects of intelligence. He created us with 7 different emotive or emotional and behavioral attributes as well. Those very emotional, behavioral, and intellectual faculties that he used to create us, I won't say mirror how God is, but we can intimate how God is, because God obviously, as we're going to learn tonight, he craves, when I say he craves, I don't mean that he literally craves. I mean that he decided to crave. Oh, Sheila's here. Hi, Sheila.
Hi,
Wow. Okay. So I'm sorry, Sheila distracted me. It's her fault.
I'm
Uh,
sorry.
That's all right. Um, so what I'm saying is by understanding these attributes in ourselves, we come to know God, because after all, it's a commandment to know God. We have an obligation to learn about God. So therefore, by learning about ourselves, as I said, we learn about God. Also, we need to keep in mind that God, that's what I was saying before Sheila interrupted me. I was saying that, correct, I look at Sheila and I forget. I just forgot for the second time what it was I'm saying. Uh, it isn't that God actually craves in a way that we understand, but God makes a decision that he craves. So he decides to crave a relationship with us. But that relationship he wants to be mutual. As a matter of fact, more than mutual, he wants us to want him. That's really all he wants. He wants us to want him. And by the way, do as many of his thou shalt and thou shalt nots as we are up to. Knock ourselves out with all those. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but to think that we can actually know God is actually absurd given the fact that we are finite and he is infinite. So while we are like God, we certainly are not God. And there's no way that we can fathom even what infinity is. We just know that we're not it. As we discussed last week, we are contingent beings. We are subject to cause and effect. Each one of us has a cause and each one of us has an effect. We're here based on a certain cause. Probably has something to do with our parents. God is not contingent or conditional. God is absolute. Just that concept in and of itself is very hard to wrap the head around. Bill, I don't know if I'm scratching that itch for you or not, but that's the best I can do.
So if I boil all that down, it's if we get to know ourselves better, we'll have a better handle on perhaps who God is.
Yeah, so when I say get to know ourselves, I mean get to know the powers within our soul. So that's another course. That's another long course about the faculties of the soul. But again, through extrapolation, we can know about God. Because we're obliged to not just be acting from a place of faith. Faith is wonderful. Faith and trust are really important. They're integral, especially if you're what you call, quote unquote, a religious person. Faith and trust come in handy. If you're a believer of any sort, faith and trust come in very, very handy. But it's not the be all end all. There's also an intellectual component that we are, maybe obliged is too strong of a word, but there's an intellectual component that we can avail ourselves to. Doesn't mean that we can ever figure it out, but just the seeking itself with humility, as opposed to having certainty. To have humility in this search goes a long way to figuring things out. How's that?
My minimal Irish brain is trying to get all that together, but basically, if I hear you correctly, we really can never know God, but we should at least strive or try to understand our fellow man, because that's God is there in them.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. What you just said. And the second thing about what you just said is don't insult the Irish like that, please. All right. Who else?
So unless there's someone else,
Go ahead.
And maybe with what Bill just said, I went back through my notes in the book, and Jonathan, I believe it's you who said, God is everywhere in which everything exists. And that makes me come to the sense of my own understanding that I have reached of God. God is omnipotent. He's around me. He's within me, he or she, or any of the other 70 plus names of God. But I also have to come to a point of acceptance at a level where I am seeing it happen in the world. When the leaves blow on the tree, I realize that that is something to do. Yeah, it's nature and all, but it has something to do with God. Interactions with people, even the ability to be here now amongst all of you has something to do with my role and what I'm to be doing for God in this world. I don't know if I'm hitting it, Bill, for you at all.
Well, I think to paraphrase what you're saying, you're speaking about the concept of divine providence, which is called hashgacha pratis or hashgacha pratit in Hebrew, which means that there are no accidents, there are no coincidences. And the more attuned we become spiritually, whatever your path is, the more attuned we become to the fact that everything that's going on around us, within us, next to us, is in fact purposeful. That there's no random acts anywhere in the world. It's like that story about the butterfly that flaps its wings in Iowa creates a hurricane in Sri Lanka or something. That's the concept. But I don't know if I addressed what you were saying.
Well, I was going to get to the point where, and that's true about the butterfly, that cause and effect. But yet, as Jew within my own practice and my own life, I have come to realize that it's really up to me to go about doing God's mitzvot, good deeds, etc. And in so bringing heaven down to earth in a sense, and generating goodness within this world. And so to
Sure.
me,
I mean, we all have marching orders. Jews and Christians all basically have similar marching orders, and that is to bring what's godly down to earth and to take what's mundane and lift it up to God. We say that God created the world, yesh ma'ayin. He created something from nothing. And our job is to take the something that he created and return it to nothingness. Nothingness meaning spirituality. We take the physical and we make it spiritual. So, is that what you were talking about?
I think
okay,
it doesn't matter, but
but you mentioned the word acceptance, and I don't know. It's all right not to be accepting. It's okay to have tension. It's okay to have struggle in these areas. It's part of the gig that we have is to not always be okay with this stuff. We're supposed to be struggling. I think God likes it personally. I mean, I don't know that for a fact. I think he likes it. All right, who else? All right, let's go. You ready? Let's go. So last week we addressed 4 questions. Yes, Robin. Rivka Sarah.
You mentioned if God likes this. My quick question is, do you think God is conscious?
I don't know what that means. What does it mean God is conscious?
Mindful.
I need more context. I really not understanding the question.
Conscious. If he is, you mentioned, what did he say? I forgot. That he likes this, then he has a mind and he's thinking, I like this. That makes God conscious, and I didn't know how you felt about it.
Okay, so first of all, there's plenty of I because I have an ego. I actually have a pretty big ego. But as I'm speaking and giving over and learning and talking, I'm trying to express Torah concepts. So these are not Yonatan concepts, they're Torah concepts. But that being said, I think maybe what you're asking me, tell me if I'm right, is that when you say, is he conscious, are you saying how can this infinite being bridge the gap to us finite creatures and have a relationship? Is that your
Yes,
question?
that's really a perfect statement. Perfect question.
All right. So it so happens that this is a point that we're going to be going deep into this evening. So rather than answer it now, let's wait till we get there. Hey, Susan.
I'm sorry I'm late.
That's all right. We forgive you. You don't need a note or anything like that.
And Wade said he had an event to go to, but he hated to miss your very interesting class.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So last week we started really with 4 questions, and I don't mean the 4 questions from Passover. And what are those 4 questions? What is God? Where is God? Why is God? And who is God? And if you think back on last week, the way we addressed all these questions was by describing not God, but by describing what God is not. God is not created in our image. We're created in His, but we tend to create our own God in our image. God completely transcends the created reality. God is not within the space of existence, as we discussed. Rather, God is the space within which existence exists. Before I move on from that point, does anybody want to push back on that, or does anyone want to say, anything, what that means?
I think we did a lot of that last week.
Yeah, exactly. Again, God is the space within which existence exists. And the reason for that phraseology is because without that phraseology, we could say that God exists in space. But in so doing, we're saying that first there was something called space and then God occupied it, which is not accurate based on what we learned last week. So God is not the product of an outside cause. God simply is. And then the last thing we covered last week is that God is not a gender. So He doesn't have pronouns. But God can relate to us any way He wants to, from a masculine perspective, from a feminine perspective. And that's for our benefit, not for His. But none of that really defines God. So today, let's go a little bit deeper than that. So now that we know what God isn't, let's begin to explore what God is. Are we good so far? All right. So we're going to address 4 questions this evening, hopefully, if we finish on time. Number 1, does God have feelings? Number 2, does God communicate with human beings? Is there an open channel, or is it an absolute unbridgeable gap? Number 3, does God ever act illogically? It sure seems like it a lot of the times. And number 4, what's up with that hyphenation? Why do we say G-D, which is the most frequent question I ever get? How come you just can't say God? Why is it G-D? So with that said, let's jump into the first question. At the core, at the core of any relationship that we have is emotions. It's all about how each party feels about the other. So it makes sense to ask if God has feelings for us. And it's a tricky question since we've already established that God transcends the reality He created. One of the takeaways from last week is God is above and beyond. God is infinity. So the question is, how can God have feelings for us if He's so far beyond the creation? So based on that, we would say that God doesn't have feelings. Feelings are for people like you and I. They're for created beings, not for God. In fact, one of the primetime players in Jewish history, named Maimonides, says in text number 1, page 38. Anybody like to read it? He basically takes the position that God does not have feelings. Who wants to read text number 1? All right, Lori, please.
God experiences neither anger nor laughter, neither joy nor sadness. God says, I, God, have not changed, Now, were he to be at times enraged and at times elated, he would experience change. Rather, all these emotions are experienced only by those who inhabit bodies that are corporeal and therefore spiritually dark and lowly, who dwell in houses of clay, and whose foundation is the dust of the earth. By contrast, the Blessed One is elevated and exalted beyond all this.
Thank you, Lori. So human beings are volatile. We're constantly in a dynamic, we're in a state of flux all the time. We're happy, we're sad, we're grateful, we're needy. On the other hand, God doesn't change. So certainly God is not emotional. Certainly based on what Maimonides is saying, it seems pretty straightforward. But as we know, there's always, who was that? Was it, I forgot the guy's name, on 60 Minutes, was it? But then there's the rest of the news or something. Who was that? Rooney? Do you know who I'm talking about?
Andy Rooney.
Andy Rooney. Yeah. And here's the rest of the news. So not so fast on the fact that God doesn't have feelings, because nothing, especially in Judaism, is ever simple or as simple as it seems at first glance. You see, Scripture paints a very different picture of God. In verse after verse, Torah describes God using very emotive terms. Here's one example in text number 2 on page 39. Who would like to read text 2, page 39? Bill, hit it.
Bursting with emotion. I will speak of God's kindness, God's praise for all that he has bestowed upon us. Abundant good for the house of Israel, provided in accordance with his compassion and great kindness. God said, surely they are my nation, children who will be true to me, and he became their deliverer. In all their distress, he was distressed, and the angel of his presence saved them. In his love and mercy, he redeemed them. He bore and carried them all for all eternity.
Thank you, Bill. So we just got through saying God doesn't have emotions, and now here we have the prophet Isaiah spilling over with God's emotions. He's kind, he's compassionate, he's loving, he's merciful. That's a lot of feelings for a God that's not supposed to have any feelings. So how do we square that? How do we reconcile that? And there's tons of references. We're just using Isaiah. There's tons and tons of references throughout Tanakh, throughout the Old Testament. So basically what we're left with is either God does not have feelings, and if that's true, then Scripture can't be taken seriously, which doesn't square. Or on the other hand, in some way, God does have feelings, even though God transcends creation. He transcends this created reality. So let me just, if anybody has an opinion, please jump in. Does God have feelings or he doesn't have feelings? Bill?
I'm sorry. Well, what I was going to say, I think, is Isaiah is speaking about God from his own emotion base. So it's how he perhaps feels that God has dealt so well with the Jewish nation. So he's thankful, and somehow he's pushing his feelings and saying God would probably feel the same way, because that's how I feel. But yet we just talked about that God just is not created like us. So how can he have those feelings that Isaiah says he has?
Interesting what you're saying. It sounds very similar to the notion in paganism of personification, where we attach human qualities to the gods, because that's the only way we can relate to them. So I don't know if you believe that or mean that, but that's the notion of what you're saying. Very interesting.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to be a pagan about it, but all of a sudden, when I read or heard Maimonides, part of me said, well, that's Maimonides' thoughts, feelings, ideas, because he's a human being. And now we have another Isaiah, who's another human being, using his thoughts and ideas and where he's coming from and what he's lived through. So it's almost like it really depends on who's writing what, and what, at least from my perspective.
I hear you. Anyone else want to weigh in on this one? Rivka, Sarah? got to unmute yourself.
Okay, I unmuted. On the page before, do you think this is negative when it says those who inhabit bodies are dark and lowly?
Hello.
I think that Maimonides was in a bad mood when he wrote it. I think that's a little bit harsh.
Okay.
Rabbi.
Because everything else has been God's love and
Bye.
support so far.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we have option number 1, God has no feelings. We have option number 2, God has feelings. And we're going to go with door number 2, which is the consensus within Jewish mysticism. You see, the mystics explain we need to differentiate between how God is in his essence versus when he puts on the creator mode, when he puts on the creator hat. Because in essence, God is transcendent. So of course he doesn't have feelings. Because he transcends all labels, he transcends all definitions. But when he puts on that I am the creator hat, in so doing, he introduces new dynamics to interact with us. Again, once God chooses to create the world, he had a choice. He woke up one day and he said, I think I want a V8. No, he said, I want to create a world. We'll never understand that. We'll never understand where that desire came from. How can we even say that God has a desire? Nonetheless, for purpose of getting our heads around this, God woke up in one morning and he said, let's create man and woman. And in order to do that, he came up with a very complicated, what seemingly complicated formula in order to do that. But his whole purpose, his whole raison d'etre for doing this was to create us and to have some kind of mutual relationship with us. And in order to have that mutual relationship, since God chose to create the world and chose to create us, he had to create emotional channels, because otherwise there could be no potential for relationship. So he had to, I won't say shrink himself, but he had to take his infinitude and create some kind of finite branches into the creation so that we could relate to him in an emotional way and have it be reciprocal. As we started this evening, I talked about 3 intellectual faculties and 7 emotive behavioral faculties. Those faculties collectively are what God uses to communicate with us. Am I freaking everybody out? You guys still with me? Yeah? Okay. Let's look at the Kabbalah, since we have nothing else to do. Let's look at the Kabbalah, text number 3, Rabbi Chaim Vital. Who would like to read text number 3 on page 40? I nominate my sister.
Emotional blocks. The world was created with the 7 divine attributes, beginning with Hesed, kindness. They are kindness, discipline, compassion, perseverance, humility, connection, and sovereignty. The role of the divine attributes in creation is alluded to in the verse, I declared, let the world be built with kindness.
Thank you. So the first and primary emotion is the emotion of kindness. It says in scripture, let the world be built with kindness. So kindness is the starting point for all of creation. God's desire to create a universe came from a place of kindness. And it's God's primary desire to express that kindness. And in our case, feelings are the bridge that connects us. So let me just get into some of these channels, what these channels are, starting with kindness. Again, kindness was the first channel. In Hebrew, kindness is called, somebody?
Hesed.
Chesed. It's called chesed, which is translated as loving kindness or generosity or a desire to get close. It's a loving way of being. It's pure, unadulterated love and kindness. That's chesed. But chesed or kindness needs a balance, because when love is misused, it creates a problem. So we have something to counterbalance that love, and that is called restraint, holding back, creating boundaries. In Hebrew, this is called gevura. So you have chesed on the right is side of kindness. You have on the left side, you have gevura, which is restraint and holding back. And there's a tension between these two things. As an example, if you are of a nature of chesed, if you're of a nature of loving kindness, and your toddler wants to go into the knife drawer and take out the meat cleaver and play with it, if you have chesed that's not tempered by gevura, if you have love and kindness not tempered by restraint, you're not going to want to disappoint your toddler who's crying. You're going to say, sure, knock yourself out, grab the meat cleaver. Not a really clever thing to do. So you must have that counterbalance of common sense, of boundaries, of restraint. So that's gevura, and they work in tandem, or they work in opposite directions, but it's a matter of coming up with the right measurement between them. Now, that's the right side and the left side, but we also have a middle. And in the middle is something called tiferet. Tiferet in English would be translated as compassion or beauty. So what does tiferet do? It takes the two extremes of love and restraint, and it combines them in a way where, yes, there's a judgment based on gevura. There's a judgment based on boundaries and restraint. But the action is based on love. Example. You want to go get a cup of coffee at Starbucks. And as you are approaching the front door, there is a homeless person asking for money. And you can't help but see that he's got needle marks on his arm. Now, if you're coming from a place of chesed, you want to give him the money. But if you're coming from gevura, the place of restraint, there's no way you're going to give him the money because you know he's going to use it for drugs, right? So you've got this tension between the two. Tiferet, the synthesis of these two, how does he deal with this issue? He says, hey, buddy, why don't you come into Starbucks? Let me get you a cup of coffee and a sandwich. Let's talk about what's going on with you. That's tiferet. That's a positive action. That's a loving, appropriate action. Let me just go through in less detail, because we have 4 other emotive qualities. And by the way, these emotive qualities, as you just saw with tiferet, that you mix and match. In other words, nothing is purely one way or the other. We have to use our seichel. We have to use the 3 intelligence-based attributes to know in what measurement these emotive attributes should be mixed. So you have netzach. Netzach means ambition or endurance. You know, those type A types that are always doing and pushing. That's netzach. You got hod, H-O-D, which means to yield or to surrender. You know, it's okay, you go first, that kind of thing. You don't want to be netzach sitting behind hod in traffic, if you can just picture that. It's not a pretty picture. And then you've got yesod. Yesod is bonding. It's a back and forth dialogue on the one hand, on the other hand. It's foundational. And then finally you have malchut, which is leadership. So these are the 7 emotive qualities, and these are the means by which God presents himself to us, and we in turn are able to relate to him. The bottom line is that we are extremely important to God, because we are the sole reason that he created all this. He didn't do it for any other reason. You could look at the universe and say, we're so little and he's so big. He couldn't have done this for little old me. He obviously did it for Saturn's 3rd ring. He did it for stuff way up there. He did it for stuff much bigger and much more important than I am. God did everything he did for you and me. That's why he did what he did. So no matter how intensely we experience our own feelings, it can't compare to the intensity and the strength of God's feelings. Because he cares for us infinitely. Look, have you ever been in a situation where a friend disappointed you? He stepped on your foot, euphemistically, and you forgive him. He comes to you sincerely remorseful, and you forgive him. And then a second time he steps on your foot, and you're a little bit leery, but you forgive him again. And a third time he steps on your foot. At some point, whether it's the third time or the 30th time, you're going to say enough is enough. I'm crossing this guy out of my phone book. But with God, there is no such thing. It doesn't matter how many times you step on his foot. He is always ready to welcome you back. There's never such thing as I am done with you. So what is that? What are we talking about? Does God have feelings? Yes, God has feelings because he chooses to have feelings so he can relate to us and we can relate to him. Does that make it a little easier for the Irishman in the crowd? Okay, good.
Rabbi,
Yes, ma'am.
the second one you said Tiferet.
The third one is Tiferet. The second one is Gevurah.
Okay, Tiferet. With the way I know that word, and maybe I'm using the wrong word, but doesn't it mean praise?
Tiferet does not mean praise. You'll see the word Tiferet within our liturgy, so you may have seen it somewhere and it feels like praise.
Maybe so. Would you place in your wrap up, would you spell correctly all 7 of these attributes?
Yeah, I'll come back to that if you don't mind.
Okay, thank you.
Or you can go to Dr. Google and you can type in the Jewish 10 soul powers, and that should bring it up for you. I said Dr. Google, I meant Rabbi Google, excuse me. Okay, so that's where we are so far. Any questions so far? All right, you ready for the cherry on the top of the sundae on this question? Not only does God have feelings for us, but here's the big one, we have the ability to affect and actually generate God's feelings. Huh?
Yeah. How do we do that?
Oh, you want to get right to the heart of the matter, huh? Okay. Yeah, we can actually change God's feelings. We create feelings within God. God has literally chosen to be vulnerable with us to allow us to trigger his feelings, especially his positive ones. I don't recommend you test them on the negative ones. And then when we do that, his feelings are actually mirrored back to us. Let's look at text 4, page 41. This is an amazing text, in my humble opinion, from the Berditchever Rebbe. Can anybody tell me, for extra credit, where is the Berditchever Rebbe from?
Ditchova.
Very good. He's from Berditchev. Okay.
Oh.
Who would like to read text number 4? Who hasn't read yet? I take that as a no one. So I'm sorry, but this is going to fall back on our stalwart readers. Lori, how do you feel about reading text number 4?
I will do my best.
Okay.
It's a divine shadow. It is God's way to provide goodness to his creations In some cases, the goodness is entirely a divine initiative, and in other cases, it is triggered by human initiative. When we improve our conduct, our actions cause divine compassion to come upon us. This is the significance of the verse, God is your shadow. And per the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, that God acts like our shadow. Sorry, my pages are a little messed up. In the sense that he reflects our conduct. As our shadow does precisely what we do, so does heaven's conduct toward us mirror our own conduct. If we do you want me to keep going?
Yes, please.
If we act compassionately, God treats us with compassion, as our sages taught. Whoever shows compassion for those whom God has created will receive divine compassion in return. We must therefore conduct ourselves with compassion and goodness, and with all the other positive traits, and rejoice in the lot that God has given us. Then God will reciprocate in kind.
Thank you, Lori. Do you guys get this? Do you guys get what's being said here?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to lose my rabbi license over this, but what I'm reading here is, all right, the other stuff, great, bonus points and all this, but really, you want the shortcut to having a good life? Just be nice to everybody. That's what's being said here. How we act within the creation is mirrored by how God acts with us. It's a mirror effect. When we give charity to help a struggling family that can't pay their rent, or when we're attentive to a neighbor and notice when they're having a bad day and we express compassion, God reacts like a shadow and shows us the same kindness and compassion. You get it?
Are you saying what goes around comes around?
For sure. But it's more direct than that. It's an express elevator.
So if we act like a bully and put our finger in somebody's eye, sooner or later God's going to come back and do that to us.
No. If we stick a finger in somebody's eye, it's not that God is going to punish us. It's that we are going to experience whatever is the natural consequence of sticking our finger in somebody's eye. It's not a punishment. It's not a tit for tat. It's not an eye for an eye. It's nothing like that. Everything that we're speaking about this evening has to do with the fact that God is a loving God and a compassionate God and only wants to do good and only wants what's good for us. Mm-hmm. And we have the ability to influence an outcome with God by simply acting kindly. What you're saying is I'm not going to say the flip side because it doesn't really correlate. The fact is, let me get more extreme. Somebody is a no-goodnik their whole life. They're just rotten to the core. That chances are they're not going to get the express elevator up to that place way above called heaven. So they're not going to, at least for the first year of being off the planet Earth, they're not going to be sitting under a palm tree drinking pina coladas. It's pretty guaranteed they're not going to. Where are they going to be? They're going to be in a place where, not that they're being punished, they're going to be in a place where they're getting sort of like a steam clean. They're getting kind of like body work done on them. Somebody's coming with a ball peen hammer and knocking out the dents. It may be a little bit painful, but it's not for the purpose of punishment. It's for the purpose of preparation, which is the ultimate ascent to heaven. So no matter what, we all end up in the right place. It's just that sometimes, because of our own actions as a natural consequence, we pay a price. Most of the time, that price is not paid in Olam Hazeh, in this world. It's paid in the world to come, which answers the age-old question, why do good things happen to rotten people? We see it all around us. The bad guys are the ones who seem to be licking the honey all the time. Bill, I'm sorry, you wanted to say something.
No, just you, to some extent, you just described the Christian concept of purgatory that was alive in the 12th, 13th, 14th centuries until, a couple hundred years ago. Purgatory.
What happened to purgatory in Christian theology?
As best I can recall, the powers to be, at least on the Catholic side, the cardinals said that's not proper teaching anymore.
Really?
I don't know all the details of it, but I just remember seeing it. That kind of went by the wayside of you can't have meat on Friday unless you're in the military, which made no sense either, right?
Yeah, it's not like you get good meat in the military anyway.
I can guarantee you don't.
So interesting, because I'm just saying, if I were the one that was like deciding what goes into the religion and what doesn't, I'd definitely get rid of hell before I got rid of purgatory. But hey, that's just me. I'm just a Jew. We're not into hell. This is not a big deal for Jews. We try to avoid anything to do with hell.
Then Dante wouldn't be able to write about anything.
And Dante would find plenty of else to write about besides the Inferno. But the takeaway from this subject really is that the key to God's feelings are in our hands. We have the upper hand in the relationship in this respect. Because he is a loving God, because he is a kind God, because he's hoping that we make the first move, because he's hoping we stand up and cross the dance floor and ask him to dance while he's waiting there patiently. We have the upper hand. So what's the takeaway? Use this opportunity wisely. Generate blessings for yourself and for those around you. That's the takeaway. I'm really excited by this concept. Is anybody else? Because I'm not feeling it tonight. What's going on with you guys? All right. C'est la vie. Susan, why are you shaking your head? Susan.
It's not that I can't concentrate. I've had a long day. And so it's just, things are just going like, I'm doing my best.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand. It
What?
might not look like it, but I am.
Tell me. Oh, okay. Okay. Fair enough.
Just the whole
Fair enough.
concept.
Yeah, I'm having an issue. I understood page 38, but then on page 39, I stopped understanding.
Well, I don't have the book, but God has no feelings. Then yes, he has feelings and he chooses so he can relate. So that's total opposite, but it was a discussion in between both of those
Okay.
statements.
I
To
mean,
summarize.
I got it. I understood page 38, but then getting to page 39 and where we are now.
How do we get there? Okay.
I
On the
just don't
one
know how we got.
hand,
I don't know how we got there.
on the one hand, if we're dealing with God in an unworldly way, if we're dealing with God above the world, then clearly, if God is infinity, then he doesn't have these petty things called emotions. But he woke up one day and said, I want to create Margot. I want to create Bill. And I'm not looking at, I don't want an ant farm. God says, I don't want an ant farm. You know what an ant farm? You ever have an ant farm when you were a kid? You know, those little glass things?
Oh, yeah.
Remember those things?
Yep.
He doesn't want an ant farm, meaning that he's not going to stand up on an ant farm and say, I am the king of the world, because the ants could care less. They're not even conscious of him. He wants us to be conscious of him. He created us with free choice, and he said, I want them to want me. Wasn't that Frankie Avalon? I want you to want me. I need you so badly. Okay, whatever. My sister is shaking her head like, I can't believe
No.
I did that.
I just figured it out. You got all the music talent because I have none.
Okay. All right. So on the one hand, God has no feelings. On the other hand, since he created feelings, he obviously has access to them, and he uses these channels of feelings in order to have a reciprocal relationship with us. On top of that, then we overlaid what I call the cherry on the cake, because this is like the greatest concept ever. in my humble opinion, or not so humble opinion, and that is that we can actually influence how God feels and how he responds. And we do that obviously in our relationship with him in terms of prayer and all that other stuff that religious people do. But even if you're not so religious, just be nice. I mean, just go out of your way to be nice. You know, I know a guy, this doesn't apply to everybody if you don't have extra money, but I know a guy that's got a few extra bucks, and he literally goes to the supermarket and waits at the cashier. And when he sees somebody that's nervous and anxious as they're looking back and forth, as they're ringing it up to see if they have enough, and he's looking at his money, they're looking at their money, he sees they're plotzing, he already has it worked out with the cashier that he'll pay the difference, and the person never knows. So that's what I mean by be kind. Doesn't mean that everyone has to go to Kroger and try to buy everybody else's thing, whatever. But that's the point here. God is in an active relationship with us. Yes, Ellen.
So, Margot, for me, I got confused when we went through on page 40 the emotional blocks and the 7 discipline attributes. So I don't know if that threw anyone else off. It felt a little disjointed to me. I know there's a whole nother course that's on just the Kabbalah. Isn't that from Kabbalah, the attributes? Or is it?
Yeah, that's from Kabbalah. But the takeaway, whether you get the 7 this or the 7 that, is that there's this channel that allows us to communicate with God. It's a two-way highway. All right.
But then for me, on page 42, God understanding number 5 makes it come together for me. God essentially transcends feelings, but chooses nevertheless to love and care and to relate to his creations with emotions.
I couldn't have said that better. That's great. Where did you find that? Where did you find that?
On page 42.
Okay, I was just kidding.
Oh.
All right. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Bingo.
I mean, I get that one.
Hold on, everybody. I mean, hold on. Glad Gray wants to say something.
I'm sorry. Why did you? Okay. What I'm asking is, does God do this on a personal level for each individual? Or is this what happens in society? Is this what happens?
He only does it for me and special people like me.
Oh, I see. No, what I mean is,
how can this big God communicate with 8.5 billion people simultaneously?
Or how does God do what he's doing in Israel? Not what he's doing, but how can this be okay in Israel if people are being murdered and slaughtered and bombed, and they are basically good people who pray, who do good for each other, who help each other? I just want to know where this comes in. Where does the
Great question. If you can hold for 20 minutes, we're actually going to attack that question.
Okay, I'll wait.
You'll wait? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else? All right, let's keep going. Question number 2, does God communicate with us? They say that if you speak to God, you're religious, but if God speaks to you, you're a mashugana. For those of you who don't know what a mashugana is, a mashugana, crazy, you're crazy, whatever. Is that true?
Depends on who's interpreting it. It depends on, you can look at somebody and, I mean, how can I put this? You can see somebody who's acting strangely, differently from you, who's maybe, I don't know, in London, Hyde Park Corner, they stand on their soapboxes and they talk about all sorts of stuff. and very often it's religious stuff about God. I mean, our God, even though, you know, we don't have a middleman. We go straight to the source. And they're talking in a way that maybe I would think is irrational. But are they being irrational?
So
Or
you're asking, who are we to judge? How do we know what's the real thing and what's crazy?
yes.
Okay, hold that question. If
20
we approach,
minutes.
if we approach this subject based on the God is beyond everything approach, so we might be tempted to say that there's an unbridgeable gap, that there's no way there can be communication between God and man. But then what kind of relationship could we possibly have with God? So Judaism is very emphatic on this question. God absolutely does communicate with us in many different ways. One way, obviously, is through the Torah, through the Old Testament. It began on a very grand scale. There was something 3,336 years ago at Mount Sinai where God spoke to 3 million children of Israel at the same time. He gave the 10 commandments on Mount Sinai. There's no mistaking that. That was a definite communication on God's part. Followed by the rest of the Torah and the instructions and the laws that were given by God to Moses. So there's no question that God communicates on that level. I also did some research because, as you know, Christianity is not my thing, but nonetheless, I deal with a lot of Christians. So I wanted to know what Christianity has to say about communication. So those of you who are Christian and into your Christianity, I'd like to hear what you have to say about this. What I discovered is that Christian commentary says that Jesus speaks through his word and he speaks through the Holy Spirit. Somewhere in Scripture, and I don't know where, it's in Christian Scripture, it says, neither loud nor harsh, nor a voice of thunder, neither a voice of great tumultuous noise, but rather as still and small, of perfect mildness, as if it had been a whisper, and can pierce even the very soul and cause the heart to burn. So clearly, Christianity also believes that there is communication, that God does communicate with us. Anybody want to comment on that?
Well, no, doesn't. I mean, I could be completely wrong, and I've never studied the scriptures in any way. I mean, I'm born Jewish. I'm not a very religious Jewish person, but
That's why we get along so well.
thank you. But my point is, doesn't Christianity stem from Judaism?
Yes.
Well, it's its basis, yes, but Christianity is a whole other thing. There's a whole New Testament. There's a whole Christian scripture. There's theology that we don't subscribe to, that they do subscribe to.
Right. But they still quote the Old Testament.
Yeah. Susan, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say that they are so similar, and you have been so understanding and explaining so well. I thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that's how the Christians weigh in. Bill, were you going to say something?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I do believe God speaks through the Spirit, through the Holy Spirit. You know, because I was in some situations, a long time ago in another country, and I almost wondered at the end of that day, I said, did God kind of steer me a different way than I should have gone? If I would have gone the other way, I'd have been, injured or something.
Was
And
this
so
in Peru
when I was
or
sitting up on a mountain?
Was this your experience in Peru,
Sorry?
Ecuador? I forgot where. Weren't you in South
Vietnam.
America?
I was in Vietnam.
Oh, it was in Vietnam. I'm sorry, I got confused.
And that night, I'm sitting up on this Hill 881, way at the top. And I'm looking up at the stars, and I happen to be sitting with my corpsman, who happened to be an astrophysicist. Why he's doing that, I don't know. And all of a sudden, you see these stars, and they twinkle and all that. And based on what happened that day, I said, God spoke to me. He's the, and I'm going to be very sexist here. He's the guy that, I think took me a different way, or made me more alert or something. I believe it. And then up here in the mountains, at times I'll go out and just walk by myself, and I'll hear the wind coming through trees and leaves. He's speaking. I'm convinced of that. I'm not sure I understand what he's saying, but
can everybody relate to that, by the way? Does everybody kind of have that kind of experience? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So then we have the level of prophecy. The Jews had over 1 million prophets in the course of in the course of history. Only 55 of them made it into the Bible. The reason why it was 48 men and 7 women, prophets and prophetesses. The reason that they made it into the Tanakh, into the Old Testament, into the Torah, is because whatever it is that they had to say affected everybody, and not just for that time, but for the future also. So that was the grade in terms of whether they get in or not. But the bottom line is that the prophets definitely communicated God's messages to us. Finally, and this is what Bill was talking about, there is a personal communication between God and us. What Bill just described so aptly, for some of it's walking in the forest and hearing the wind rustle in the trees. For me, it's sitting on a bus stop in Times Square. I don't know, it's different for everybody. No, I'm just kidding. That's not godly for me at all. But I think each one of us has had the experience of God communicating with them. Now, you may think, well, yeah, I'm not a prophet, so how could God possibly communicate with me? But yes, he does. Because God's communication with us takes on many different forms. Have you ever had the experience when you're suddenly struck with a positive inspiration, just out of the blue, to pray, to do a good deed, to call an old friend? Like, it's just out of nowhere, boom, out of the blue.
Yeah.
What is that?
I don't know. It's happened to me several times.
That's God communicating, Sheila.
Absolutely. Yep.
Don't tell that to anyone, they'll lock you up, but that's God communicating to you.
I heard it as God hides his face from us by letting us believe that we're making the decisions.
Oh, that's an interesting point, Rabbi Gray. Elaborate, please.
Well, I've experienced that. I can't say I was on the hill in Vietnam. I'm just saying that many times I had an opportunity to go left or right, and somehow or other, out of a clear blue sky, I chose the right. And years later, it's like, wow, that was a great choice.
Excellent.
I didn't know that God was doing it for me at that time, but I knew it later, but I never saw his face.
Excellent. So this is subliminal messaging. This is God's, what do they call it? Targeted advertisements.
Yeah, right.
Yeah? That's what it is. And it works wonders. So the next time you feel some kind of unprompted inspiration, it might be God communicating with you. Then again, it might not.
Words come out of my mouth that I didn't make. I'm serious. I mean,
Well,
you go into business with them, and I'm standing here thinking about it. Do I want to do that? And I heard myself say yes.
This sounds like a story, Norm.
It's a big one.
It's a long story.
It's a major move in your life to suddenly go into business with somebody. And I don't remember saying yes, but it came out that way.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So I can't guarantee you that everything you hear is necessarily godly. You got to figure that part out yourself. But I do want to share with you this beautiful letter a woman wrote to the Rebbe, to the Lubavitcher Rebbe in Brooklyn. She asked how she could find personal guidance from God. And the answer, I love. The Rebbe says, God speaks directly to your soul, and these communications are behind your good resolutions.
Hmm.
So your desire and your commitment to do good, when all of a sudden you decide, I'm going to do a good deed right now, this is God communicating directly to your soul.
Mm.
And that's what's behind the good resolutions that you make. Now, you might be wondering, if God has so much to say to me, why can't he just pick up the phone? So to that, unfortunately, I've got the classic Jewish response is, that would be too easy. Which is true, because we have to maintain, and God has to create an equilibrium in his creation by giving us free choice. We need to maintain free choice. So the messaging is there, but we have to choose either to do it or to ignore it. That's up to us. So all I'm saying is that we shouldn't ignore those flare-ups of inspiration. That's actually God speaking to you. So my advice is capitalize on it. All right, before we move on to the next question, any comments, questions, cucumbers?
I get, when I wake up in the morning, some mornings, well, I wake up every morning, but some mornings when I wake up, I have a thought in my head that I know has come from God. It can be an idea about what to do about a certain problem, but also some business idea that I thought of, and I know that this all comes from God.
Well, you are lucky. Seriously.
I don't always act on it.
All right, you ready for that question? Does God ever act illogically? And you can approach this question from a few different vantage points. It can be asked philosophically, or it can be asked emotionally. And it's important to distinguish between these very different questions. The emotional question is born from experiencing ugliness in the world. The world isn't running the way we want it to run. There's heartbreak, there's pain, there's loss. And we wonder, as Glad, I think it was Glad, we wonder how God could be the God that acts so illogically. How could God allow suffering? So that's approaching the question, does God act illogically from an emotional perspective? How can God allow these terrible things to happen?
Choice.
The broader application of that question, which is the classic, why does God allow evil? Why do good things happen why do bad things happen to good people? We're going to try to broach next week. But keep your expectations low on that one, because I mean, Harold Kushner sold 10 million copies of a book because it had a great title, but his answer is completely unsatisfactory. So anyway, right now, let's just say this. Our perspective is limited. What we deem as logical versus illogical is super subjective. We don't know what's true. And we might not at all reflect reality. So we are completely subjective. This text number 9 on page 48 by Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik is my absolute favorite text from this whole course. Who would like to read text number 9, page 48? Oh, my sister wants to read. Okay, great. Knock
Gotta
yourself.
find it. 4 responses, page 49?
Page 48.
Oh, 48, okay.
Text
Does
number 9.
God ever act illogically? Rear view. Certainly, the testimony of the Torah regarding creation, that it is very good, is true. However, this is only stated from the unbounded perspective of the Creator. In man's finite, limited view, the absolute good in creation is not apparent.
Before you go on to the next paragraph. Oh, I'm sorry. Read that last line.
The contrast is striking and undeniable.
Okay, so before you continue with the next paragraph, to paraphrase the first paragraph, what's being said here is that, yeah, maybe everything is perfect and great and wonderful from God's perspective, but from our perspective, sorry to be crude, it sucks. It's awful. Okay, go on. Second paragraph.
To what might the situation be compared? To a person who views a beautiful tapestry, the work of a fine artisan, which contains woven into it on its front a representation dazzling to the eye. To our great sorrow, we see the image, the world, from the obverse side. Can such a sight become a sublime aesthetic experience? Thus, we are incapable of comprehending the panorama of reality, without which one cannot uncover God's master plan, the essence of the works of the Holy One.
Thank you. So what is being said here? Picture a beautiful tapestry. What you're looking at when you're looking at the beautiful tapestry is God's view. Walk around and look at the back side of the tapestry. What do you see? You see a bunch of knots and hanging strings and a balagan, a mess, craziness.
Oh, no.
Nothing pretty about it. That's the side we get to see. So yes, it's a beautiful tapestry, but our vision is limited. We can't see always the beautiful tapestry. We can have faith and we can have trust that it's a beautiful tapestry, but we can't see it. So going back to Glad's question, well, what about the suffering? And what about this? And what about that? We cannot see. We only see the hanging strings and the knots. So our understanding of what makes sense and what doesn't make sense is really, really limited. So all of this speaks to God beyond us, running the world from the other side of the tapestry. And yet the whole purpose of our class this evening is to gain insight into our relationship with God, which is another reason that we're even though we know we can't know him, we're trying to get to know him. So for this, we need to look a little bit further. You see, God also acts illogically for good reasons. Yeah, God isn't always logical. He doesn't have to be. He made the rules. He made something called logic. Since he's the creator of logic, he's not bound by the rules of logic. I don't think that I want to read text number 10, but I'm going to paraphrase it for you. Text number 10 is a weird allegorical conversation between the Jewish people and several different entities. So to paraphrase, basically,
What are the
these are responses to somebody sinning. When somebody sins, what does wisdom say about somebody who sins? It says that it severs the relationship. Sin severs the relationship between us and God. And then prophecy comes along and says that sin represents a spiritual death. And then the Torah says, oy, 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 this is really, really bad. But then what does God say? God says, I don't care what you did, I forgive you. That's illogical based on the rules that he made. Based on the rules in the Torah, God saying, don't worry about it, I forgive you. Step on my toe again, I'll forgive you again. That's completely illogical. So God is not bound by logic. He can act illogically, especially when it comes to loving us. That's what love is. Love is illogical. When you truly, madly, deeply love someone, you don't get hung up on what they do. Well, I don't know if that I can really say that, but that's mostly my experience. I wonder what Tony would have to say, Sheila. Okay, whatever. I'm not going to ask. Anyway.
Well, can I just say, we've been married 64 years, so one of us is doing something right.
Okay. I was going to say something totally irreverent, but I'm going to bite my tongue and not say it. Kanai
Okay.
Nahori, you should go for another 64 years, Sheila.
Thank you.
So God loves us, so he forgives us in an illogical way, and that's true love. And the truth is, we reciprocate. Look, for the Jewish people, even though from time to time, historically, it might make sense to drop this whole committed to God thing. And God knows we've had plenty of times in history where our resolve has been tested.
15 minutes.
No matter what, we keep coming back to God. There's this beautiful story that Elie Wiesel wrote about. Do me a favor, whoever's talking, mute yourself. I want to share the story with you to drive home the point about illogic.
Rabbi, can you mute all for now? From the participants?
It's like a meeting. Yeah, it ends at 9. I'll call you then. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, everybody's on mute, so if anybody wants to talk, just unmute yourself. All right, I want to tell you a story that Elie Wiesel tells in his book. I think it was Night was the book. He says that when he was 14 years old, he was in Auschwitz, and he was in the barracks. And one day he said he saw something spectacular. He couldn't believe what he saw. There were some very chashava rabbeim, some very, very important brainiac rabbis in this barracks with him in Auschwitz. And they decided that they were going to hold a trial. And they were going to put God on trial for high crimes and betrayal of the Jewish people. So they set up a prosecution, they set up a defense, they took it very seriously, and they started arguing the case. And before long, it was clear that the prosecution had the upper hand, so much so that the defense threw up its hands and said, "You're right, God is guilty." So unanimously, they all said God is guilty of high crimes and betrayal of the Jewish people. And Elie Wiesel is describing this in detail as it's going on. And here's the mind-blowing part of the whole thing. They finish the trial, and one of them says, "All right, it's time to pray the afternoon prayer." And they all start praying to a God that they just held responsible for high crimes against the Jewish people. Norm, what do you say about that? Oh, you're on mute. I'm sorry, Norm. This sums it up. Do you get it? We irrationally keep coming back to God, and not just the Jewish people. So God is irrational with us in a beautiful way. We're also irrational with him. We're constantly doing acts of self-sacrifice. All right, any questions, comments, cucumbers? No?
I was going to say that if we want God to forgive us, then sometimes we have to forgive God.
Oh, I like that. Was that Margot?
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, good one, Margot.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Well, I'll say I personally, without a jury, put God on trial several times in my life and found him guilty, and I prayed anyway.
I think that's why I like you so much, Norm.
Yoshikawa. Well done.
Well, and I wanted to just add to what Margot said that because God forgives us, me, I find it easier to forgive other people. It's easier for me to say, well, if God can forgive me for the things I've done, who am I to not forgive someone else?
Wow, that's a good one. It brings to mind a story that we often use, and maybe I even told you without realizing it, that we use this story right around the high holidays, when this time of year, is a time of seeking forgiveness from God and from other people. So there's a story about a peasant farmer who made what's called a cheshbon hanefesh, a accounting of the soul, which is appropriate to do before Rosh Hashanah. What is an accounting of the soul? It's literally an accounting, like an accountant makes an account. He writes down all the assets, he writes down all the liabilities. So first he starts on a piece of paper and he writes down all the good things in his life. God, you did this for me. God, you did that for me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As for me, I didn't do so much good. I lost my temper with my wife. I hit my child. I did whatever. And he goes down the litany of things that he did wrong. He says, God, let's look at what you did wrong. Why did you make my wife sick? Why did you kill my cow, my only source of income? And he goes down his list. And at the end of it, he says, oh, you know what, God? I forgive you for all the things you did wrong. You can forgive me all the things I did wrong. Let's call it even. Let's start again a new year. Okay, just a story. All right, let's move on to why does God have so many names? Now, you may not know that he has so many names, but in the Jewish tradition, in scripture, we see at least 7 different names related to God, which reminds me, of course, of a joke. A gunman breaks into a house, he robs this couple, and he threatens to shoot them. Then he asks his wife, the guy's wife, he says, what's your name? And she says, my name is Elizabeth. And the gunman tells Elizabeth, it's your lucky night. I was going to kill you, but my mother's name was Elizabeth. So I can't shoot somebody with the same name as my mother. So then he turns to the husband and says, what's your name? And terrified, the guy says, my name is Harry, but everybody calls me Elizabeth. Okay, the Torah uses, that was a cheap joke. I'm sorry. That was like a cheap laugh. The Torah uses various names to refer to God. You may not know this, but as an example, we have the name Chavaya, which means compassion. We have the name Keo, which means kindness. We have the name Elohim, which is justice. We have the name Tzivaot, which means diversity. Shakai means miracles. Adonai means sovereignty. Ie means presence. Why does God need so many names? Christians keep it real simple, right? You just have one name for God? Yeah? Okay. So why all these names? Especially if you remember last week, we said that when Moses asked God his name, God answered in the language of Popeye, I am what I am. So if he is what he is, what do we need all these names for? The reason why is because if somebody is nameless, if somebody has no names, how do I say this? If you knew somebody who had no name, then how would you describe him to somebody else? Oh, he's that intelligent looking guy that has glasses, or he's the guy that is an insurance salesman, or whatever it may be. How would you describe this guy? He's indescribable. God in his essence is indescribable. Therefore, he can only be described in ways that he creates and interacts with the world. So these names of God are actually not nouns, like, hi, my name is Bill. They're verbs. They describe different aspects of God, which brings us to what's with a G-D? Why can't we just say God? What's wrong with just spelling it out normally? Well, we've got 2 answers. First of all, hyphenating. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? G-D? Yeah? By now, anybody who knows me and is receiving emails from me, it's G-D. Every week, it's G-D. Why are we hyphenating?
I have an answer that I was told.
Let's go for it, Norm.
Okay. That piece of paper might be burned or destroyed or thrown in the garbage. So you don't want to desecrate God's name. So you don't spell the whole name.
Very good. Well, Norm is saying that we don't want to desecrate God's name. And if that name is being used in a casual way or in an appropriate way, or if it's thrown into the garbage, it's not a good look. It's even in the Ten Commandments. It says, don't take the Lord's name in vain. It means don't act casually with a name. It's not just a verbal prohibition, it applies to writing as well. We don't need to read the text, but basically the text will say, based on the Shulchan Aruch, based on the Code of Jewish Law, that it's forbidden to erase even a single letter from God's name. So we make every effort to ensure that it never happens. But,
Rabbi?
Yes, Robin, go ahead.
Wade mentioned that he thought that perhaps there was not whatever language alphabet was being used at the time, that there was not a letter or connect, there wasn't something in existence.
Well, actually, it's not only in existence, but the actual spelled out names of God are within our scripture, within our prayer. In the prayer book, everything is spelled out. But nonetheless, out of reverence for the name or out of reverence for the concept, we don't spell it out. But you could say to that, anticipating the next question, God, God in English, is not a holy name. First of all, it's not in the holy tongue. It's not in Hebrew, it's in English. Second of all, it's not one of the holy names I just rattled off. So what's the problem? So the point is, whatever name is used in general reference, in this culture, we say God, even though it's not in and of itself as a holy name, it does take on some weight. And thus we make every effort to avoid even the English version being erased. We don't want to throw it in the trash, hence the hyphen. So in all relationships, but certainly in our relationship with God, respect goes a long way. Rivka Sarah, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I thought it was respect, fear, superstition, like spitting on a baby to ward off the evil spirits.
Sitting on a baby?
Spitting on a baby when they're a newborn to ward off.
Spitting on a baby.
Yeah.
That was pre-COVID.
So that's what I thought it was something. Again, respect, fear, superstition in that realm. What?
Oh, that's when you spit 3 times through your fingers. Two.
Poop, poop, poop.
I don't know about Sephardic versus Ashkenazi versus different countries.
Okay, bottom line is, whatever. Christians, knock on wood, we spit, right?
Don't.
All right. So tonight, we learned about God's feelings. We learned about God's communication. We learned about God's illogic, and we learned about God's names. What's the common denominator? Is that God chooses, he chooses to care deeply about you and me. He loves us. He speaks to us. He forgives us all the time. And all he wants us to know him. So in the spirit of this class, I'd love for all of us to work on deepening our personal relationship with our Creator, whatever that looks like. Do something for God this week. Why? Because he wants it, just because he wants it, no other reason. Because that's what you do in a relationship. Questions, comments? Cucumbers, thank you. Bill.
I would believe in God so much more if he would make the Chicago Bears a winner.
What's going on there? I don't know what's this, how bad are they?
About the Falcons. How about the Falcons?
Sorry guys, I don't do sports, so I can't really help you there. But I do want to share with you, hold on. You are screen sharing. I'm screen sharing, hold on.
It still doesn't see us.
Here, check this out. Everybody can see?
Yes.
Yes.
Lesson 2. His nature. 1. God is, by definition, beyond feelings. Nevertheless, God chose to create the world and to relate to it and to us with emotions and feelings. Therefore, many Torah passages describe God expressing a variety of feelings towards us. 2. God gave us the power of generating his own feelings through choosing to reflect our feelings back to us. Therefore, when we act kindly, God acts with kindness towards us. 7. 3. God communicates with humanity in several formats. First and foremost, God communicated through the Torah, both the written and oral laws. God also communicates via prophecy. He further communicates with us individually via subliminal communications that cause us to experience unexpected inspiration. 4. God generally chooses to stick to the rules of logic that he created, while reserving the option to act irrationally at times. An example of irrationality is the concept of divine atonement, through which God illogically pardons those who perform teshuvah. God's love for us is super rational, and we reciprocate in kind by being stiff-necked, illogically, and stubbornly devoted to God. 5. God is essentially beyond any name definition. Divine names only identify God's behaviors. God is referred to with different names depending on his actions, with the diversity of action naturally giving rise to a plurality of names. 6. We revere God's names and would not want them to be erased, defaced, or discarded. Hence the traditional hyphen in God, a sign of our care and respect.
Okay, so next week, now that we've really gotten the preliminaries out of the way for the first 2 weeks, we're going to cover, God willing, next week, God's reasons. Why did God create us? Why did God create evil? Can we question God? Is God jealous? So let's get into that next week. In the meantime, happy to hang out if anybody has questions, comments, or cucumbers.
The
Anyone?
only question, I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
I missed last week because I never got the link and I didn't realize that it had started. And the other thing is I don't have the book that everybody's reading out of.
So as to last week, I can send you a recording if you feel like watching it. And I can also send you a link. Isn't it funny that 20 years ago, if I said I'm going to send you a link, you'd go, what does that mean? But now everybody knows what we're talking about. Anyway, I can send you a link that has the student workbook on it.
Thank you.
So you can print it, or you can read it off the screen, or you can buy it from Amazon, but it costs $40. So I would recommend that you just deal with a copy I have.
Thank you very much.
Bill?
Yes. Do we have prophets today?
Probably. I think so. I mean, it's hard to say, but I think it's pretty clear we have prophets today. What do you think?
I'm not sure I really understand prophecy to begin with, but some would have said that Dr. Martin Luther King might have been a prophet. But I'm not sure we have prophets in the terms that they were written about in the Old Testament. So I'm up in the air. I mean, I hope there are.
I'm up in the air too, and I can't really turn anywhere for a source.
Right.
Except the Torah seems to indicate that we all of us have a potential level of prophecy. As to what that level is, I don't know.
So there's no union of prophets to go to.
No, not even a union of non-prophets.
Union.
Okay, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Susan, you are so full of thanks.
And you're so deserving.
I didn't hear you say that again about 10 times.
That's true.
See you next week.
See you next
All
week.
right, see you next week, Susan. Anyone else?
Enjoy the evening.
Thank
Sheila and I were together at Torah study in Blue Ridge. So
was?
I invite anyone else in the Blue Ridge and the North Georgia area to have Torah study with Rabbi Markovitz or whoever we have. Sometimes you, Rabbi. Fourth Monday of the month, and Rabbi has all the information. So we've had a long day. So if I look, I have company at the moment too. So if I look a little befuddled, I am. But I enjoyed what I could understand, Rabbi. But some of the stuff just goes.
Well,
I do
me too.
my best.
Me too. Join the club. You're in good company. Anyone else? All right. I thank you very much. I wish you a beautiful week. Please keep Israel in your prayers. Israel is under significant bombardment as we speak.
Yeah.
And God should keep all the innocents safe and grant us a decisive victory to put an end to all this terror and all this mayhem so that we can fulfill what it is that we're supposed to do and to be a light unto the nations and to usher in a new era of peace and prosperity for all.
Yes.
Amen.
All right. Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you. Hi,
Good
everyone.
night.
Good night.
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 Oh, I thought somebody was saying that.